This is Mrs. Fonte, and I'm here to tell you about two people in Michigan history that made a really big difference. When we think about the study of history, I always ask you, why do we study history? And hopefully at this point you know the answer. We study it because we get lessons from each of these people that we can apply to our lives. If all we did was just live our own life, we would only have maybe like 100 years worth of lessons. But when we learn about these people, we can learn additional lessons that are really important for us to understand. We're going to be talking today about two really famous people. We're going to be talking about this guy, Techumseh, and this guy, Mason. We'll start off with Techumseh. Now, whenever I think about people in history, I always kind of get a feeling about their story. Sometimes the feeling is happy, sometimes the feeling is a little sad. When I think about Techumseh, it kind of gives me a little sad feeling because his story is kind of tragic or sad. But there are still really great lessons to take away from Techumseh. All right, so let's go back in time a little bit and review. We've been studying about the United States and how it came to be. We know that there was that big war called the American Revolution. And then after that war, we had a brand new country called the U.S. Well, all of the eastern coast of the U.S. at this point, it belongs undisputedly to the United States. But the part where Michigan's in, that part is a little bit more disputed. People are arguing and fighting all about this part. And really, there's still some British that are left and some Native Americans that are left that still control it. We know that there were a couple really important laws. One was called the Land Ordinance of 1785, and it gave a whole bunch of land to the United States. Part of that land was Michigan, which became a U.S. territory. We also know that there are some pockets left in Michigan, pockets, like I said, of the British and the Native Americans, and they were really upset about the fact that this land did not just belong to the U.S. Techumseh was actually a Shawnee Indian, and Techumseh did not believe that the land could belong to anyone. Think about it for a second. Let's say that you own some property and you go away. Well, you're not actually standing there. The idea that you can own a piece of property because you have a piece of paper and that piece of paper says, "This land belongs to me." Well, that idea was hard for Native Americans to understand. It was a very European idea. And Techumseh, even though there had been treaties signed and gold paid to the Native Americans, he really didn't believe that the U.S. could own the land. Basically told the Native Americans, "We were here first. It's our land. This is wrong." And he got a whole bunch of Native American groups together. And he said, "You know what? We need to fight to take back our land." And he and his brother worked really hard going around and gathering these Native American groups together. Wow. All of this tension between the U.S. settlers who were moving in droves into Michigan territories and Tecumseh and other Native American groups and the British started to bubble up. It got more and more and more stressful. And then the British did some stuff to make it worse. Like, do you know that they actually gave weapons to the American Indians? Guns and knives and all kinds of weapons that they used actually against the settlers. In fact, it got pretty violent until finally everything started to bubble up. And in 1812, there was a war. So the U.S. Congress ordered that they were going to send soldiers out, and the soldiers were going to fight against people like Tecumseh and the British, and they were going to get rid of them in the land so that more settlers could come and it would be safe. Well, Tecumseh and all of his Indian warriors and the British soldiers, they were like, that's it. So in Michigan, actually, in 1812, in Mackinac and Detroit, do you know that they won control? In the very earliest battles, it looked like the British and the Native Americans were going to be successful. And in fact, it wasn't until there was this really important battle that was led in Put-in Bay by a really young guy named Oliver Perry that the U.S. was actually able to defeat Tecumseh and to defeat the British. In fact, during this battle, Tecumseh died. His body was never recovered. Now, when I think about Techumseh and I think about what he did, I think about what lesson can I take away from him. Even though his story is a little sad, I think about this. He cared about his people. He was a great leader. He didn't believe that land could belong to anyone, and he really felt like you have to stand up for what you believe in. Those are the lessons that I would take from his life, and I hope they're lessons that you'll consider taking as well.